Welcome, ladies, to Thomas's Reading Room. I'm reading from a book that I wrote, Trip Across the Pond, Personal Vietnam Experience. We'll be doing two videos here, but they'll be the last two chapters that we're going to do right away, and 25 and 26. And the 25th chapter that we're going to do right now is 55,000 gallons of kerosene and one less engine. Approximately 11 in the evening the next day, 250 of us soldiers climbed aboard a brand new, never-before-flown DC Super 709. Leaving the runway, those of us that looked out the windows observed lights flashing, both on the ground and in the air. We were going home via that airplane, and those soldiers down on the ground in the jungle were fighting and perhaps dying. How sad I felt. It seemed as if we were leaving them behind, though I realized that we had put in our fair share and those soldiers were doing the same. "Good luck, men," I said to this self, then turned from the window. We had not been in the air more than a half hour, and a soldier sitting beside me next to the aisle began telling me how much he disliked a person that earned the name Hanoi Jane. He said that she had been misinformed, although that was no excuse for treason. Though her ignorance, she brought about many deaths. How well he remembered reading an issue of the Stars and Stripes and observing a picture of the person called Hanoi Jane walking alongside of Ho Chi Minh in Hanoi. Ho Chi Minh was showing her where bombs had supposedly been dropped by the United States in a populated area. The soldier went on to say the person called Hanoi Jane had spoken out clearly, knowingly, against the United States. In turn, she had spoken out against the soldiers representing the United States, and indirectly she had spoken out against soldiers representing other countries in Vietnam that were employed by the United States. Raising his voice, he said those soldiers and the soldiers of the United States had been sticking by their country, right or wrong. The soldier stopped speaking, and I, rolling back into the subconscious, relived an experience. Delta Company was on an operation with its three sister companies, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, and I was assigned to the battalion commander. Someone had the latest Stars and Stripes issue, and it was passed around. There was that picture of the person called Hanoi Jane with Ho Chi Minh on the front page, like the soldier sitting next to me had spoken about. That was the first time I had learned about the person called Hanoi Jane and her antics. Every one of those soldiers' thoughts were unanimous. Should the person called Hanoi Jane have been in that area with us, she would have been the first casualty of the day. There had been a soldier with us called Montana Fast who told me earlier that he did not want to shoot Charlie. He loved to sneak up on Charlie, and after slitting Charlie's throat, he would cut off his ears. Montana Fast said Charlie was a sneaky sons of a bitch and hard to catch. That day, when he heard about the person called Hanoi Jane and her antics, well, the only thing I could say, he was pissed and hurt simultaneously. I had never seen him with a look on his face like that before. The soldier sitting beside me began to speak again. The person called Hanoi Jane was being used as a tool in the enemy's attempt to demoralize all soldiers in Vietnam who were representing the United States, though the enemy's main drive was targeted at the United States itself. Like a fool, she was unable to see the difference. Even so, there was no excuse for causing the death of our soldiers, her brothers. I had learned later that those craters Ho Chi Minh had showed the person called Hanoi Jane were caused by defective SAMs sent by Russia. It seemed that Russia was not in the practice of sending other countries their best equipment. I was told that some of the SAMs would go up into the air, turn, and come back down, exploding when they hit the ground. I was not sure whether the soldier sitting beside me wanted to argue. However, there was not a way I could be a contender. The person that was called Hanoi Jane was effective in all the wrong ways. Soldiers died from her effectiveness and the enemy's abilities to carry out their plans expertly. Little had I realized, and at the time, how much pain would linger on in the hearts of many millions throughout the world. They lost their beloved and felt that it may have been from the initial act of one person. A couple of hours passed as those thoughts flowed through the field of the mind, with me being outside of it, and we soon landed at Yokota, Japan. We got off the airplane and stretched the legs, so to speak. Half an hour later, we boarded the airplane and ascended into the air. As we flew near the base of Mount Fiji, the captain of the airplane came over the intercom and advised us that the airplane was not pressurized. He was waiting to receive word from his company whether to fly on into Anchorage, Alaska at 1,200 feet or dump 55,000 gallons of kerosene out the engines and land again. We flew at the base of Mount Fiji for approximately 20 minutes waiting for word. The wind and turbulence was extreme. It seemed as if we were sitting on a piece of paper and the wind was blowing the paper every way but upside down. We would be stable, and then in the next instance we would drop, perhaps like a lead box falling from the Empire State Building, until we got a break from the turbulence. Every one of us was probably wondering whether that airplane was going to stay up. The captain came on the intercom again and advised us that he would be dumping 55,000 gallons of kerosene out the engines, and if we cared, we could look out the windows and watch. I thought, is he nuts? Here we are, going home, at least we'd like to think so, and the captain thinks we would be interested in watching kerosene fall out of some engines. What concerned me was whether those engines would keep operating and whether we were going to stay in the air long enough to land in the United States, a place I'd not seen in almost a year. We launched again, landed again at Yokota, and learned some fucking idiot never got the baggage door shut tightly. An hour later, we were back in the air with apologies from the captain. He told us it would be a 6-hour flight to Anchorage, Alaska. It seemed everyone on that plane was calm and took more or less everything in stride. When we landed at Anchorage on a runway that was snow-covered, everyone thought the captain had made a smooth landing. The airplane stopped, then the captain came over the intercom again. In so many words he told us, approximately half an hour before we had landed, one of the engine seals began to leak oil. Oil was leaking at a good rate, so they had to shut the engine off, meaning that we flew in on 3 of the 4 engines. Further, we would be held back approximately 18 hours as a mechanic would have to fly up from San Francisco to repair the oil seal. The captain said we could select a hotel of our choice and it would be their nickel. Because we would be held over in Anchorage, it was decided that we would go through customs there. In that way, we would save time. After everyone received their baggage, they ran to the counters to be the first ones checked through. Except me. Sorry, there was no fucking way I was going to stand in line like a cow going to the goddamn meat market. I sat on the floor and propped my back against a wall. The last person had checked through, and there was no one in the area other than one customs man and me. He looked over at me in surprise, then smiled. Raising his hand against the counter, there was a look on his face that seemed to say, "It's okay, buddy. I understand." "Go on, pal," he said, with a smile. Smiling back, I got up and we both walked away. In the airport, I walked into a gift shop and purchased an Eskimo doll. For what reason, I do not know, other than I was attracted to it. It stood a foot tall, had a genuine leather coat with hood, leather boots, and pants. I might say it was expensive, though, whoops, who cares? The soldier that sat beside me in the airplane went with me to a hotel that had been recently built. It was called Captain Cook Hotel, and we rented a room with 2 king-size beds. It was a time of the year when there was no sun to speak of. Not being able to sleep, the soldier and I went across the street to a bar and began drinking. We talked to a few people, and they were good to us. They spoke to us like we worked next door somewhere. Of course, I never mentioned that we had arrived from Vietnam and we were stuck here for 18 hours. After a few hours of socializing, the soldier and I stumbled down the street to a cafe, or whatever they were called. People seemed very white-skinned to me. Oh, hell of a change from where I'd come from. In Vietnam, everyone was dark. The drinks and food seemed high, though how would I know what was high, having been away most of the year? After breakfast, the soldier and I went back to the hotel and attempted to sleep. I could not sleep worth a damn and did not care to understand that I may be wired very tight. The soldier could not sleep either, and we definitely did not want to watch TV. The only answer was, go back to the bar. We drank a few more drinks, then the bartender told us that the airplane was ready. We had only a few minutes to get to the airport. the bartender called a cab for us. There were about 6 of us soldiers there, and we had an awful lot to drink. The soldier that was with me was drunker than 40 thieves, and he became very funny. The 6 of us soldiers got in the cab, I think, and we were telling that cabbie to get moving in about 20 different ways. The cabbie was busting his butt, and the cab was sliding back and forth across the streets, up onto the parkings, and through traffic lights. We were rolling around like 5 or 6 basketballs in a boxcar. Whenever we came close to hitting a vehicle of some kind, there were several times, the soldier that had been with me would yell, "Crash! Sure, why not? Let's crash!" Strangely enough, we made it to the airport in one piece. That cabbie did one hell of a job driving and probably never forgot us for 1 minute. We not only thanked him, we gave him one hell of a tip. Everyone was aboard, present, and accounted for. Then 3 soldiers began causing much trouble. They had a lot to drink and obviously could not hold their liquor. Although one of the 250 soldiers, 3 was not too bad. The officer in charge was very good and had the necessary understanding to control the situation. He would have thrown those 3 soldiers off the airplane. Finally, everything was calm and the airplane left the runway for Travis Air Force Base, located a few miles south of Sacramento, California. That completes that chapter, and we will be with the next video coming up. Travis Air Force Base, San Diego, and I'm home physically. Thanks, folks, for listening to me.